Sawadee ka! Welcome to Hot Thai Kitchen. So today I'm making creamy Thai tea ice cream bars using no machines. But instead we're going to use a special ingredient that's going to keep the ice cream soft and smooth without churning. It's actually an old school Thai method that I really think deserves a comeback. Let's get started. First order of business, we need to prep the mold because the ice cream is going to go from the stove into the mold right away, so you're not going to have time later. So you can use popsicle molds, of course, but to do it the traditional way, you can use any old rectangular dish, and then we're going to cut it into pieces later. And yes, indeed, in Thai, this is called ai tim tat, which means cut ice cream. And to prep the dish, I simply oiled the dish and then line it with parchment paper, and the oil is going to help the parchment stick to the sides. And then you want a lot of overhang because you're going to use that to pull out the ice cream later, and just secure the sides with some paper clip. That's all. That's out of the way. Now let's brew the tea, but first I need to boil water, which I have not done, so cut. Let's brew the Thai tea. So you will need Thai tea leaves, which you can buy at any Asian grocery stores. Any brands will work for this. And to brew, it's very simple. I'm just gonna pour in some hot off the boil water. Give that a stir. And now I'm gonna let that steep for 5 minutes. It's been 5 minutes, I'm gonna strain it. Now because there's orange food coloring in here, you wanna line your counter with something because this could stain, okay? Pro tip. I'm gonna pour this into a fine mesh strainer, the finest one that you have, preferably something bigger. It's okay. And then you wanna push out as much liquid as possible without being obsessive about it. There we go. And you should end up with a little more than a cup of liquid. You don't want to use this right away because there's a lot of really fine tea dust in Thai tea. So you want to let it sit for just a minute or so to let all that dust settle so we don't pour that into the ice cream. While the dust settles, let's deal with our special ingredient. The secret to keeping ice cream soft without a machine is tapioca starch. Yes, and I'm using Pine Brand today, who is also our sponsor. Pine Brand's flagship product is glass noodles, which you've seen me use on the show many times, but they also make high quality tapioca starch that is pure with no additives, and I love their sturdy packaging, which means I don't have to worry about flour leaking in my shopping bag, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. Tapioca is very versatile. You can use it in sweet and savory dishes. I'll link to some recipes in the description, but one of the most unexpected uses of it is in keeping ice cream soft, and I'll explain how that works in a minute. We first want to dissolve the starch by adding just some of our evaporated milk, just enough so you can whisk it. And you want to make sure all the lumps are gone before you add it to the pot. This could be any liquid that you're using, by the way, but I don't want to use the tea because the tea is hot right now and it might cook the starch when you add to it. So you want to use cold or room temperature liquid. And now I'm going to add this to our pot. Followed by the rest of our evaporated milk. And I made it so that this recipe uses up a whole can of evaporated milk. You're welcome. For sweetness, I'm going to add sweetened condensed milk, which is a key ingredient in Thai tea, and also a whole can. How convenient, right? I'm going to add some whipping cream for some creaminess and a little bit of salt to balance all of that sweetness. It's very, very important. Do not forget the salt. Instead of the whipping cream, if you want something lighter, you can go with milk or half and half, but the lower fat you go, the icier and the harder the ice cream is going to be, which is not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're looking for something more refreshing, like more popsicle-ish. But for me, I'm looking for rich and creamy, so whipping cream it is. Now, I'm gonna add our tea in, and I'm just gonna pour it through my fine mesh skimmer one more time. Just in case. You don't really need it, but make sure you hold back on the last little bit where most of the dust is. Straight into the sink for no stains. Give everything a stir to dissolve the condensed milk. It's looking like Thai tea already, right? Like this is the color right here. And yes, you can make this any other flavor that you want. The technique applies, and I'll write more about that in the blog post. So now that it's all dissolved, I'm going to turn the heat on just medium. And then I'm going to keep stirring, and it's very important that you do not stop stirring because otherwise the starch is going to settle at the bottom and the ice cream is not going to be thickened evenly. What you want to do is bring this to a full boil and completely cook the starch, and it's going to thicken our ice cream base. This is the key technique right here. So I'm waiting for two signs. The first sign is it's going to start to bubble, which means it's reaching a boiling temperature, and I'm looking for the thickness to stabilize. So I'm cooking and I'm cooking, it's getting thicker and thicker, and then it doesn't get any thicker anymore, which means the starch has done all the job that it can. See, when I stop, it's starting to bubble. Can you see the bubbles? You can see movement. There we go. I'm seeing bubbles around the edges, and it hasn't gotten thicker in the last little while, so I know that this is now done. I'm turning it off. What's happening here is as the starch cooks, it absorbs some liquid and it gels up, and in doing so, it prevents that water from becoming frozen into ice crystals. So that's how starch works to help keep ice cream soft rather than freezing into a hard, icy block. Now, this is not a unique technique to Thailand. There are many cultures around the world that use some sort of starch to help improve the texture of their ice cream, and I'll write more about that in the blog. Okay, the skin is gonna form on this really quickly, as you can see. Not to worry, but this is why we wanna have our mold ready, because it will get thicker and thicker as it cools, and as it gets thicker, it will be hard for you to get a smooth surface when you pour it into your mold. I'm gonna spoon this into my popsicle mold first, and I love this popsicle mold because it's so small and it's so cute and it's just the right snack size. And now the traditional cut ice cream one. And see how it's super thick? If this gets cold, you won't be able to smooth the top. So right now it's hot enough that if I let it settle, the top will smooth out, but if it's really cold, you get lumpy bits. We're gonna see some bubbles. We can just use a toothpick to get rid of those, and that'll settle and smooth out as it sits. And that's it. Now you want to let this cool to room temperature before sticking it into your freezer so as to not melt anything else in your freezer. And then we're going to cut it up. So here's one that I made yesterday. And to take this out, you want to run a thin knife or spatula along the sides without the parchment, and then carefully lift the parchment overhang. You can run hot water under it to get it come out, but I try not to do that because this melts pretty easily, and you can go overboard really easily. Oh, here we go. I got it. I got this. Yay! Okay. Now that that's over, you can trim out the edges if you like for a clean cut, and then you can just cut it into whatever size you want. And because of that starch, the ice cream is soft enough that yes, you can just cut right through it. The traditional way is to make rectangles, and then you use a wooden skewer to insert, and there's your stick. Peel it off from the parchment, and there you go. This is like classic, traditional, old school style right here. If you want, you can also cut it into little cubes. Let me set this down for a second. Oh my God, so cute. Imagine this at a party. You know, you don't have to commit to like a big ice cream. You can have a little one. How cute is that? Look at it. Moment of truth. I want you to see how easily I can bite through this. Look at that. It's so good. Oh, it's just like a texture like you've never had before. It's creamy, it's soft, but because of the tapioca starch, it's a little bit chewy. And I mean that in the best possible way. I mean, like, this is ice cream you can chew, which is awesome. It melts perfectly. The sweetness, the Thai tea, everything is coming through just right. This is revolutionary right here. I mean, when was the last time you made creamy ice cream simply by cooking something on the stove and freezing it? It's incredible. So I hope you give this a try. The recipe, as always, will be on hotthaikitchen.com. And a special thanks to all of our Patreon members who help support the show. And if you want to know what that's all about, how you can get perks and watch my videos ad-free, check out the link in the description below. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time for your next delicious Thai meal.